is another breakdown that I use in doing evaluations. Now, the three wise men that appeared before Christ were men that followed the stars. And in those days, they didn't have astronomers. They didn't have heavy telescopes. They were actually astrologers. And they were called wise men. And even President Ronald Reagan, his wife Nancy Reagan, consulted an astrologer constantly. And he all his major decisions and his whole presidency and the successes that he had, they attributed to following astrological advice. And this was actually on the news. It was on all the major news channels. The kings and queens of Europe always consulted astrologers and psychics, and actually the king and the church were always together, and the church preached to the masses, don't follow such teachings, because they were afraid that the average person may be informed about something, and that scared the hierarchy, that other people would be well informed, and they told them to stay away from it. And yet the king and the church were always hooked up, and when the United States was formed, they tried to separate church and state. Now, years ago, I saw some charts that were in Egyptian pyramids, and no one understood the symbols and everything in these charts, and because of my background with the Kabbalah and numerology and everything else, it became apparent to me what was happening with these charts. And I found that when I experimented, and now it's been 35, 40 years since I've been experimenting with those principles, now understand this language. And when you numerize somebody's name and you bring it down into a triangle and convert it to these symbols, it tells you exactly what's happening in someone's life at any given point in a major way. I call them turning points or major life changes. And another example is one time when I was in Albany, New York, I went to an Indian astrologer, and I gave him my birthday, and he sat down with a calculator for like a half hour doing all these figures, and he told me that I was in the dragon's tail right now, and that money was going up and down, and that in 6 months henceforth, all my friends would turn to enemies. And basically that's what happened in both cases at the time, but it took him too long. But this method of doing someone's name and converting it to planets is a shortcut to cut all through these calculations that take forever, and you come to a definitive conclusion within a short period of time. However, it takes years and years to learn this method, and actually I'm the only one that really uses it that I know of. Other people just scuffed at it and they never bothered really trying to figure it out. And it's called the abracadabra, and unfortunately the magicians, people that do regular magic with the bunny coming out of the hat, borrowed that name because it sounded mysterious and esoteric. Years ago, I met an old Bavarian Kabbalist named Miles Donka. He was 70 when I was in my early 30s, and he was able to take a tarot card and make you see things in it that no one else could see. It contained numbers and the Kabbalah and everything else, and it was all done in symbols and everything else, and it was a very interesting thing. And he told me, and he explained that the 52 cards in a regular playing deck of cards represented a week, the 52 weeks of the year. And people don't realize that words like lunacy or starstruck or the rising star or somebody being a lunatic or something ludicrous comes from the moon, and the rising star, of course, comes from astrological principles. And starstruck is another word. And even people in emergency wards will notice that when you have a full moon, that people act a little funny, so they call them lunatics or loony. So all these words that came into our common everyday lives were really from studies of planets and the moon cycles, which of course control the tides, and in a lot of cases the female cycle is affected by the moon too. And these are scientific principles. And the word starstruck or rising star meant that the person would have some prominence. Now, I also do graphology, and the graphology is the study of handwriting. And the way you form your letters, the way you cross your T's, the slant to your letters, whether they go forward or backwards, whether you write up or down, all mean something. Do you write like squares, or do you write triangles in your letters, or do you write circles? And do all the letters seem to be formed together or independently? These are all traits. And they even have a handwriting analysis. People who are experts come to court to give testimony as to a person's personality, character, or tendencies. And many times people have gone to court with expert testimony. And I've been studying handwriting for years and years, so I blend numbers, names, Oriental astrology, American astrological references, the Kabbalah, the Abracadabra. I even read regular cards, which have the same references as tarot cards, which I can also read, but I don't like doing it because it has a horrible stigma with the public. But I do all these things privately anyway, when I'm usually not with other people. And the regular cards actually are the same as the tarot cards, but people don't know that. The tarot cards were actually the predecessor of our regular playing cards, and the 52 cards represent the 52 weeks of the year. And as my friend Miles Danker once showed me and taught me years ago, that even the Kabbalah and numbers and symbols are combined in the tarot cards, which one can easily apply to a regular playing deck of cards. So years ago when I was reading people and I pulled out cards, they would say, "Can you do my tarot cards?" I would pull out a deck of tarot cards, and they say, "Could you do regular cards?" I pull out a deck of regular cards, because if you know them both intently, you can do either one of them just as accurately. It is surprising how many religious or superstitious people would make a gift appear to be a curse and a deficit rather than another form of information available. And some people would say, "I don't really want to know what's going to happen." And like an ostrich, they would hide their head under the ground, and they feel that if they don't see any evil, there won't be any evil, and if they don't know anything, they don't have to worry about anything. But they don't realize how exposed they really are. Years ago, they used to have these little 4-monkey figurines, and one monkey would be hiding its eyes, which meant hands over its eyes, and which meant I don't see any evil. Another monkey right next to it would have its hands over its ears, says I don't hear any evil. Another would have their hands over their nose, I don't smell any evil. Another would have its hands over its mouth, I don't say any evil. And the other hands would be to the side, saying me no, know nothing. And I don't see, hear, know, or any evil, and that's no protection at all. And years ago I had one person once say to me, what happens if I don't believe in any of this? And I would say, well, it would happen anyway. And the cyclist would say to you, ready or not, here I come.